over, you got softball later this afternoon.
What's that?
You got softball later this afternoon.
Oh, I know. Got to overcome some suspect coaching out there.
Could be hard.
The head coach is pretty good. It's the assistant coach that's.
As good as your assistants.
I want to thank Director Baker for his time today. He's always been very generous to give us a few minutes with the media before he starts his coaching search. As per normal with other searches, he'll visit with you today, and then he will be involved in the search, and he'll see you again after our introductory press conferences. After his opening remarks, I do have a list here from the media members who I'll call on for your questions and follow-up for Director Baker. Wren, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Michael, and certainly appreciate you guys being here today. Hope everybody's having a good afternoon. It's beautiful out there. First, I just want to say thank you to our team this year. I thought they really did a really good job, our players and our coaches, and that includes Coach Devries. Won 19 games, won 10 Big 12 games. Felt like we laid a really solid foundation in year one, and I was very proud of them. Was prepared to continue to invest in the program, and am prepared to do that. We're going to be competitive in rev share, competitive in NIL, competitive in budget, and Coach DeVries and I had several conversations. We're prepared to invest in him and his staff. And had been talking about that for several weeks, felt good about the plan. Ultimately, he made a decision to leave for another institution. I'm at peace that we were aggressive in trying to retain him, and ultimately I recognize that it's not my decision to make. He gets to make that, and so we wish him well. My job now is to focus on our student athletes, on our program, on our fans. Our student athletes did a wonderful job representing us this year, and they deserve our gratitude and our appreciation. And I'm extraordinarily disappointed they did not get the opportunity to play in the NCAA tournament. I've sat in selection rooms. I've looked at team sheets. I'm probably deeper into Ken Palm and Torvik and net ratings and stuff than your casual fan, and probably even much more than most athletic directors. And I was very surprised for us not to be included in the field, and do feel like that we should have had a chance to play. But I don't want that to take away from just what a great year that our student athletes had, given the fact that the entire roster was new, given the fact that we had some injuries. I thought our crowd was great, particularly on our weekend conference games, and it just showed that you can come in here and you can turn this program around and you can win. You have the support, you have the talent to draw from, and you're going to have the resources. I hope our underclassmen give our new coach a chance to come in and give them a recruiting pitch. I can promise them we'll be resourced competitively within the Big 12 and nationally, and we'll find a coach who's committed to them and committed to this university and this state. We have a great basketball tradition. We've been to 31 NCAA tournaments, 11 Sweet 16s, 2 Final Fours. We've got tremendous fans that make our home court one of the best advantages in the country, and that's not me saying that. Ken Palm, which is probably the most recognized analytics, has it as the #1 rated home court in the country. And then the #1 thing we have is some of the best people in the world, and they deserve a coach and a program they can be proud of. As we look forward to the next coach, last year we went out and we hired a proven, successful coach who had a great first year on the job. I think what he was able to do here does nothing but make this job more attractive. People see that you can come in, get the resources to build a roster to be competitive instantly. I anticipate having great interest. We will be competitive in our salary, competitive in our budget, as I mentioned, competitive in all resources, and we will work tirelessly to bring the best person to Morgantown to coach our team. In terms of process, started really yesterday, and we have a head start because we did a lot of work last year, and we had a lot of time last year to dig very deep, knowing that we had an interim coach in place and could feasibly have a search. And so while some of those candidates are off the board and there's probably a few new ones on the board, a lot of them we've already done deep dives on. And I think the last thing I'll just say is this is a great, great job. It's a great community. It's a great state. And it's a place that's filled with some of the best people that I've ever had a chance to know. And so the next coach here is going to be extremely fortunate and lucky to be our coach. And hopefully they're going to come in and really work to build a program, put down roots. So with that, we'll take questions.
Great.
So, continue with Darren a little bit in terms of his name had floated out there the last week or two for some openings. So, was there a surprise that this came when he came to you and said he was going to do this? And did you get a chance to compete with maybe a contract offer?
So, when you're having success, I don't think it's ever a surprise that people are calling your coaches. I think most of our fans would be surprised at how many times a year we have to try to ward off potential suitors for coaches and other employees. You know, our creative people, our graphics people, our SIDs, our trainers. You know, and I've talked about, you know, from a resource perspective, you know, we're prepared to stretch what we have. But there are certainly people in college athletics who have more money. And so I think you're always thinking about competition. And I recognize the job that Darren was doing. So we sat down, I think I first talked to his agent early February, that, hey, we want to make sure we reward his success. And I sat down with him several times over the last few weeks, to talk about his contract, his compensation, what we could do there, to talk about rev share, where we were going to be, and NIL opportunities. And so I think we had a really good shared vision of what we need to do to continue to build on the program. He had a lot. I mean, pretty much every job that was open inquired to see if he would have interest in talking, right? To my knowledge, he only talked to one. So I don't think it was a situation where he didn't feel good about here. You know, I think there was probably things about Indiana that was very attractive to him. But it's really probably a better question for him. I'll just say that, you know, he and I had very candid and open dialogue and conversations. I felt really good about our ability to ward off most suitors. Listen, Indiana, if you look at since 2000, we've been to one more NCAA tournament than them and 3 more Sweet 16. So recent history, our program has been just as successful, if not more, but I recognize it's one of the historical storied brands in college basketball. I just felt like that we had a really special thing going here too. So was I a little surprised yesterday, just the timing, how it went down? It went down quickly. But I knew that people were calling around him. College athletics is a small world, so people talk, and you kind of know what's being said out there.
Can you explain his buyout a little bit in Reader's Digest terms?
Yeah. So generally speaking, my philosophy is commitment works both ways. And so if you're bringing a coach in, you're giving them a contract. And there's a certain amount of money that you're putting in that contract, and a certain amount of that money is guaranteed. And so if you fire them for what they term is without cause, and cause is not losing, right? So cause is more moral turpitude type stuff. So if you fire them, you owe them whatever you guarantee in the contract. So generally speaking, I feel like whatever we would owe them if we fired them that day, it's fair to have them owe us half of that. And so that's where you get some of those percentages in our contract sometimes. So in Darren's case, we guaranteed 75% of it. So his number back to us is 37.5%. We have coaches that are 100% guaranteed. Theirs is 50. We have coaches who are 50% guaranteed. Theirs is 25. But I just feel like you're going to ask us to have a commitment to you, even in terms of a contract extension, that commitment should work both ways. We should both have skin in the game. And so so that's kind of contractually where we set up. And I'll say this, I mean, people can, and I've had people ask me this, do you wish the buyout would have been higher? It's a pretty high buyout. I'm not aware of anybody paying a bigger one. Now, in addition to the buyout that's required on the percentages, we have a date in there that if he left before April 30th, he also owed us our upfront costs, which included some moving costs, maybe a signing bonus, and what we had to pay Drake to hire him. So that causes that number to go up. And I think the cumulative effect of that number, if there's a bigger number out there, I've never seen it. I've asked a couple of media, national media guys, and they can't recall a bigger one for a men's basketball coach. And so, ultimately, we'll have that coming into us, and that'll give us a chance to have something to work with as we embark on the search.
Wren, you've always had certain characteristics that you've discussed, in these openings. Is this going to be much of the same? Does what happened change any of that? You look at different things. How does that going to work?
Yeah, I don't think it changes. I know that there can be a knee-jerk reaction when you lose a coach after a year, and so human nature is to think, oh God, we have to get somebody who's connected to here, or who. I just think your job is to go out and get the best coach that you can, and you want to have coaches that other people covet and want to come after, because the alternative to that is nobody wants your coach, and and that's not very good. And listen. There are coaches who maybe have ties here you could bring here, and still you're at risk of losing them. And so, I don't know that you really change your profile very much. I will tell you that I do think this is a place that is about fit. And we spend a lot of time in the search process hammering that away. I almost feel like sometimes too much. I talk a lot about the spotlight and the fishbowl, and a lot about fit. We did that with Darren, I think you just go back. We've hired good coaches. We're winning in a lot of programs across the board. Do I wish that we weren't sitting here doing this again a year later? Yes. Does that mean that there was something wrong with our process? I don't think so. I think our characteristics and our profile are still very similar, and ultimately, having knowledge or ties of WVU in the state is on that list of characteristics. It's just not number one, and it's weighed with a bunch of factors and given, I think, appropriate due diligence.
Use a search firm on this as well?
I haven't decided that yet. We'll probably try to decide that by the end of the day. Obviously, having done this last year, I think I have a pretty good handle on the candidate pool. The search firms just are really great to help coordinate a lot of logistics, and you're working maybe plan A, B, and C. Maybe you have 3 to 4, but you're so focused on those 3 to 4, you're not necessarily working on those contingency plans, and a lot of times they're working ahead of you in case that you need them. You hope you don't have to break glass and need those plans, but if they're already hatched before you get there, that helps. So I'll make that decision sometime today, still kind of thinking through that.
Okay. Yeah, Wren, obviously this is similar to what happened to the women's team a couple years ago. Do you take anything from that, either the process in which you hired Mark or Mark's contract or anything from that you apply to this now?
I don't think so. I have followed a similar process for every search that we've done here. And for the most part, I hope I'm getting better at it the more at-bats that I get. But for the most part, I've had a process I've used for several years now. And going back to my time at North Texas, I've been extremely fortunate to have hired some really successful coaches and good people that treat people the right way, and that have won games and helped young people grow and flourish. And so, I think that process has paid off over the long run. And again, you can get hung up on that you lost a coach after 1 year for a certain job. There were a lot of jobs that called that I know he declined to speak with, right? So like maybe there was only 2 or 3 jobs that could potentially pry him away, and one of them came along. I don't know. That's probably a question that would be better for him. But I don't think you can just like second guess everything about your process. You try and learn from it. Maybe some interviews there's an extra question or two, but I don't know that I would alter or change a whole lot.
And then just because one of the players mentioned it. Are you going to consider internally, which is Chester Frazier?
So we have a lot of guys on staff internally, and you guys know if you've been here, I don't ever talk about candidates. But if somebody raises their hand and wants us to at least look at them, I think we probably would. But I think you listen to all of your stakeholders appropriately. But ultimately, my job is to find the best coach for the program over the long term, and that's what I'm out to do.
Down front with Mike.
So you mentioned at the start of the NCAA tournament snub and going in that direction, and that's been out there. Because of the timeline here, and also mentioning that DeVries maybe would have only left for a couple of jobs, do you think this result would have in any way been different if you were selected and were playing in the NCAA tournament? You would have played last night. You win, you're still alive. If you lost, you wouldn't be. But do you believe in your heart this would be different, or they would have waited for him? Or
I suspect, given what's been put out there on the commitment they made to him contractually and the fact that they're sending us a check in excess of $6 million, that no matter what the timeline was, they were going to talk to him. The fact that we didn't get included in the tournament probably altered the timeline. Would they have been talking to other candidates potentially during that time? I don't know. I know that when you're running a search, you've got a list of people you want to see, and you're seeing them as soon as you can in terms of their availability. And once you feel like you have the right coach, you got to move quickly. So could it have had an impact? Maybe. I just don't know kind of how their process was playing out. And probably a really hard one to answer. But
yeah, and then the other end, I guess, of this whole saga, several months, you mentioned talking to DeVries even in February about possibly, staying on a contract extension, things like that. Is there any regrets or even unsettling nature of how the season played out with Tucker's injury, missing out the tournament? Not much was kind of said about the injury at the time, and then that decision was made around the time it sounds like maybe you talked to Darren about an extension. There's obviously conspiracy theories out there, but where's your feelings in terms of how this last season played out? Any regrets, any unsettling nature?
I don't think I have regrets. I said, first of all, when it comes to injuries, like our medical people are in charge of those things. They clear people to play. They hold people out. In some cases, they'll send people out for specialists to look at. And so it's not really something I ever get in the middle of, and that's intentional. I think we were very aggressive in trying to make sure that Darren knew that we were going to do whatever it took for our program to be competitive in the Big 12, which makes you competitive nationally. Our rev share numbers very strong. Our NIL support is very good. The what we have allocated for staff and for budget and what we're willing to do for him is all very competitive in the Big 12. We laid that out. We laid that vision out. We laid out what we thought this program can be. And ultimately that wasn't enough. But I think in terms of regrets, no, I don't have a ton of regrets. I think we tried to do the right thing. We tried to make sure we're staying ahead of it. We tried to be aggressive. And ultimately we're not in control I'm not in control of the decisions that other people make. And so you just have to respect that it's their decision to make, whether it's the one you want them to make or whether you agree or not. It's part of life.
What was your final offer to Coach DeVries, and would you, given the opportunity, try to make another one, or was that pretty much a best and final offer?
Yeah, I would say I'd stay out of the term. I would stay away from putting what our terms were out there. For one thing, we're getting ready to hire another coach, so that'd probably be their starting point. It was competitive, and I made it clear to him that we would like a chance to counter if there was an offer that came from Indiana. Just the way it unfolded, we didn't get that chance. And so, I think for us, we're always going to do what we think is best for our program overall, and we have a lot of mouths to feed. But I made it clear that within reason, I think this was a quote, within reason we will do what it takes to keep you here and to keep building on this program. I think that's a quote that I had.
And a little bit of a different angle. A lot of athletic directors are getting out of the business. You've mentioned that this has been something you didn't expect, so much coach turnover along with all the other changes. Is that starting to wear on you any?
It wouldn't matter if it was, because there's not another job that will pay me this much, and I have 3 women at home spending money. So, no, listen, you have seen me, unfortunately, too many times in these situations in 2.5 years. But I'm resilient, and I think I'm actually calmer in times like this than I probably am when times are calm. And a little bit of that's intentional. When everybody else is kind of calm, I think as a leader you kind of want to apply a little pressure. When everybody else is maybe a little panicked, you want to show great calmness. But I also have a lot of confidence in what this program is and what it can be. And the reason why I do is because we have a long history with a lot of different coaches of sustained success. It has not been a flash in the pan, a one-trick pony. We have been to Sweet 16s with a bunch of different coaches. We've been to NCAA tournaments with a bunch of different coaches. And we have a great fan base. We have, as I mentioned, the #1 home court advantage according to Ken Pom. Those are all things that's going to allow us to be successful. And we'll go back and we'll find another great coach, and we'll move on. I think the changes in college athletics overall are probably way more of a weight because of the unknown. This, I know that there'll be a conclusion here in the next few days. We'll hire a new coach. We'll bring them here and introduce them, and they'll start to build support and rally the fan base, and we'll start talking about next year. The unknowns of house settlement and all of those things, rev share, how that's going to work out, what NIL look like in the future. I think those are much, much bigger things because there's no really end. You're always thinking about those, and you're always wondering how you can arrive at building a map to navigate them when you don't really know where the end point of your destination is. But listen, I love what I do, and are there challenges to the job that you would prefer not to go through? Yes, but I get to come to work every day and work with great people, and I get to see young people grow through overcoming adversity and becoming leaders, and watching them interact within their team and represent a state and a university that's very proud of them. And so, I'm not sitting around thinking about retirement, and I couldn't even if I was. So you guys are going to have to endure me a little longer here.
Bob Herzl.
Yeah. Let's see. First of all, I'm not very good with money or figures, things like that. But ballpark, you paid him about $2.8 million to coach the team this year. Correct me if I'm wrong on these things. You're getting back for him to leave about $6 million. Can you patent that? I mean, you had a 19-win season. You had a coach for you made $3 million. He got $2.8 million. Everybody's happy. Indiana's happy.
So, I think just for the consistency long term, where the real money is in building a ticket base and a following. So, you want stability. But I do collecting $6 million will help us make a transition to a new coach, and help us with some other items and other things in there. But I would rather have a coach that's building some sustained success that people are getting endeared to and feeling good about. But you want – listen, I don't ever want the driving force for somebody to be here to be that they're trapped by a big buyout. Like, I think you want people who want to be here, right? Like, you want people who feel a connection to be here. But when you hire somebody and you invest a lot in them, or you put a lot of guaranteed money on the table, I think you are trying to make sure that you're at least going to be compensated if you lose them, especially in a short period of time. And so, I think in this case, at least we do get some money coming our way, and that'll be able to help us support our program.
I know you're not going to talk about candidates, but can you the monkey that's hanging over the room is Bob Huggins. I mean, there's a lot of stuff online, etc. that this is his home, this is where he wants to be, etc. What are your thoughts about?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about candidates. I think I answered that last year by saying appreciate our tradition, especially his contributions to it, but really focused on the future, and that's probably the same way I would answer it today. Other than that, I don't have a lot to offer in terms of specific candidates.
Are you answering that as if he is a candidate, or
no? I would not probably go into any specific candidates.
Justin Jackson.
Wren, you talked a little bit about the great things that West Virginia presents. You talked some financials. When you kind of mix that together, I'm kind of wondering, in your opinion, do you think there is a commentary here that you have it's a good, I agree with you, it's a great position here, and there's a lot of good things here. But then you have the Big Ten, you have the SEC, and do you think there's a gap from there and everyone else? And maybe it's a large gap to compete against.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a financial gap. If you take the average budget of SEC and Big Ten schools and compare it to the ACC and Big 12, there's a delta between that average. And I've said this before. You look at our budget and go compare it to Kentucky's. Their budget's probably $40 or $50 million difference, and a lot of that is in their distribution from the SEC. So that's a gap that's growing. You have a lot of concern from the outside world about consolidation, continued consolidation amongst power conferences and power conference programs. So do I think that's a factor? If I'm being honest, yeah, it's probably a factor as you're looking at this, because people, they don't, when you don't know the end date of where this is all going to end, rev share, NIL, all of these things, and but what you do know if you're in one of those two conferences is your conference distribution is going to be very healthy, because those two are, and that's your biggest source of revenue. So that's definitely something that you talk about and think about. But when it comes to men's basketball specifically, the Big 12, I know this year I think most metrics had us as third or fourth, but we've been the top conference in the league 3 out of the last 4 years, and our resources within the Big 12 are set up to be very competitive, and so I think we will be competitive nationally. And so I would tell any coach that is looking at our job that we're going to be competitive, and we still don't know exactly what the future NIL world will look like as the settlement implementation. First of all, the settlement has to be formally adopted. Then the settlement implementation committee's got to finish out working to find details of what actually will pass the fair market value for NIL deals, and how that'll all go through that clearinghouse. But in terms of rev share, everybody will be working off the same cap, and we're going to be at the cap. And so that tells me that we're going to be competitive, and it should tell coaches we're going to be competitive, and that would be my message.
I'm wondering, once Indiana got involved, and you said you had told DeVries that you wanted to make a counter offer if possible. In your heart, though, I mean, was there a way to compete with Indiana? I mean,
I think that we could have competed because we had a lot of donors over the course of the last few weeks who were very interested in keeping Darren and continuing to build on what we're doing. And even since the snub on Sunday, some of them had doubled back with me and sent me texts, hey, we want whatever we need to do to build a roster to keep him. And so I do think we could have made a competitive counteroffer. What that would have ultimately done, I don't know, but I felt good about it. I wanted a chance to do that, and it just didn't work out where we did. By the time he had the offer, I think he was pretty set that that's what he was going to do.
$6 million is a pretty nice nest egg. You have football bills. I'm sure you have other coaches and programs you want to take care of. Revenue sharing, just a lot. But you could also expand your search coaching too and offer someone a higher salary, for example, that maybe under ordinary circumstances you couldn't. Do you have specific plans? I'm sure you don't put a buyout in like that unless you have something you want to get out of it.
Yeah, so, it probably also opens up your search a little bit because you could potentially pay a larger buyout to buy somebody out, right? If you really wanted to do that, whereas a year ago that might have been a tougher thing for us to do. I think for me, it's a sequence of things. The first one is to go out and identify the coach that I think is the best coach to lead our program, and then figure out what that compensation and contract needs to be, what the buyout is for that individual, see what's left of that $6 million, and then probably fight with colleagues throughout the department and probably colleagues on campus of how we're dividing that up. Everybody knows that's a public amount, so they know it's coming in. There's probably a lot of people that are thinking about it. But I think really my only focus right now is to get the basketball coach and get the right one and get the search right, and then we'll figure out kind of what's the best thing to do with that money coming in.
And then continued consolidation of conferences sounds like a code word for like super leagues. Is that kind of the model that you see out there in the horizon, and making sure you're in that top, 48, 64 teams, that if it does fall that way?
I wish I knew what the end game was for conference realignment and those conversations, because then I would be engineering an exact path to make sure we're in it, right? I just think in college athletics, your best predictor of the future is probably to look back at the past, and we've seen consolidation of conferences in the recent past. We've seen consolidation of brands into conferences. Conferences are getting larger with more brands planted in more time zones and more geographic areas. And so one of the things that's constantly on my mind is we have a really good brand. We have strong viewership. We have strong valuations when you look at all of those different metrics that put valuations on programs, whether it be in your licensing revenue, in your brand awareness, in your TV viewership for football, men's basketball, other sports, all of those things. But one of the things that drives those is competitiveness. And so the best way you can position yourself for the future of whatever's going to happen in college athletics is to be successful today. And so I think we're always thinking about that, focused on it, and trying to be prepared for whatever is around the corner. I suspect there will be more change. I can't predict exactly what that change will be, but we're going to do everything we can to make sure that West Virginia is in the middle of it.
Kane from Channel 5.
Yes, what do you believe it will take to get the Mountaineers back to an elite level of college basketball?
I think getting the right coach in here and giving them the tools to be successful, and then keeping them retained. I thought we had a great first step this year. Unfortunately, we've got to go back out and redo step one. But I think I think we're very, very close. I mean, you saw this year we beat 3 top 10 teams. We had 6 quad 1 wins. We should have been in the tournament, in my opinion. And so I think I think we have the pieces that are there. We've just had some setbacks the last couple of years that we've had to battle through, but we'll get there.
Wren, over your past coaching searches here at WVU, the mantra, I believe, has been be quick but don't hurry. Just to confirm, is that the mantra again?
It is. I think I will never rush a process because the desired goal is to get the best candidate. But you definitely feel a sense of pressure to be as efficient and as quick as you can, partly because of the fluid nature of rosters in the transfer portal. And so that's probably a greater pressure point than it used to be. But I think as an athletic director, you have to resist that driving the search, because long term you can make a mistake trying to solve some short-term concerns.
And before the governor announced the investigation into the NCAA, was the athletic department consulted?
We were not consulted, and I've made my thoughts clear on the process. I don't ultimately, have athletic directors don't control even presidents on their campus. Half the time they don't even control their coaches. So I definitely was not in control of that decision. I do appreciate the governor and the attorney general's both passion for our state and wanting to defend West Virginia. But no, that was not something that I was consulted of or a part of.
Okay, we'll finish up with last two. We're running out of time. Bill and John here.
Current mechanics of the basketball over there now, how will that be until you get somebody in place?
Yeah, so we had a pretty senior laden roster, and we've already had one student athlete go into the portal, and so I think I want to say maybe 5 or 6 eligible returners. So we're in spring break right now, so we haven't had a full team meeting yet. But I have Ben Murray, who's a sport program administrator, reaching out this afternoon to those players. I'm going to meet with some of our coaches starting as early as this afternoon and over the next 24 hours. I don't know that we need to identify an interim head coach because we don't have any games, and there's nothing like that. We just need to make sure that academically that things are going well. The guys that want to work out are working out, but I think this is a coaching search that we can execute pretty quickly. So hopefully, in the near term, we have somebody in that's taking care of those things.
Along the last thing here, along those lines, mentioned the portal and the timing. Does the snub help at all in that it kind of expedites the process by a few days?
Well, it certainly would have if you had retained your coaching staff, because they would be fully focused on that right now.
About the search
Yeah,
for the coach.
it probably does. Although most of your candidates are still playing, and so you're subject to their schedule a little bit. If I could get them all done in the next 2 or 3 days, I could probably have this thing wrapped up in record time. But a lot of those candidates are tied up at least for the next 2 or 3 days, and some of them could go into the next weekend. And I coached, and the last thing I would ever want to do, listen, when you're a student athlete or a coach, you invest. The normal person at home cannot imagine the amount of time that you invest. You're watching film when you're at home, you're watching film when you're at the office, you're at practice, you're game planning, you're strategizing, you're watching the film from the last game you just lost to try and get corrections, you're watching film from the next opponent and sometimes the opponent after that. You get to postseason play and you're having to watch multiples of opponents because you don't know who you're going to play. And so it is, I know this sounds crazy to people who haven't been inside of a program like that, but I always said this when I coached: when you lose that last game, it's like the death of a loved one, because that team is never going to happen again. And you spent so many hours, and you have seniors who are leaving, who you love, and who've invested blood, sweat, and tears, who many times have played their last competitive game. They've been playing since they were 5, 6, 7 years old. And so I don't think that you want to cheat those kids and those coaches out of getting the full attention of their coach when they're in March Madness in the postseason. And so I'm respectful of that. I'll want to see candidates as quickly as they'll see me. But I also I have a certain amount of respect for candidates who say, listen, the one thing that this can't do is be a distraction from this team, because these guys deserve to have my full efforts.
One last question, Bob Herzl.
Yeah, there's a new president. What's his role going to be in this? And number one, and what role do your donors play in the final decision?
Yeah, so I'll do donor first, and I'll circle back to President Benson. Again, I think when you're in this job, you listen to all stakeholders, but your job is to balance those opinions, right? And I generally, I'm going to listen and value opinions from a variety of people and places. But as I said during the football search, ultimately, I know who pays the price for hires, and it's me. You see who's up here with me today, just me. And so, and so ultimately, I've got to make the hire that I think is best. And so you try to weigh all of that in making the best decision that you can. human beings just generally, I think, always like to have leadership around them where there's comfort. So I've never walked into a locker room where student athletes didn't want somebody who's on the staff, because that's what they know. And there's comfort in what you know. I think as an athletic director, you're really trying to look at what's best for the long term of the program. You weigh all those factors, but you really got to find what's best for the program. President Benson has been awesome. He has, since he was named president, I've probably either talked or texted with him at least 2-3 times a week. He's very engaged. He's still finishing up his job there, but anytime there's an article comes out, he's watched press conferences of our coaches, and so he's wildly entertained by Rich Rod's press conferences. So most of America is at this point, I think. And so, but he's very engaged in athletics. He played college basketball, and so he loves basketball. He was aware of the efforts that we were making to try to retain Coach Devries. He was aware that Indiana was talking to Coach Devries, and I've texted with him, talked to him yesterday and today, just kind of as we embrace on the next steps, as have I President Gee, who's still our president and also is a big supporter of athletics. So, I've got 2 bosses at work right now and 3 at home, my wife and 2 daughters. And my mom is actually in town right now, so she's really the big boss of them all. So, but yeah, I've tried to keep them both up to speed.
Wren, thank you for your time. Members of the media, he will visit with you all again after candidate is announced at the press conference.
Thank you guys. Have a great day. Enjoy this weather.